Collection agencies act one of two ways. Either they're representing someone else and collecting for them, which is usually what happens with like large lending institutions with like Chase, Capital One, a lot of the government student loans, the education programs. They're usually just being represented by a collection agency, and then they can also acquire debt. They might have investors. They raise money. They outright purchase the debt. Now the debt is, depending on how recent it is actually it determines its value. First placements are the most valuable, and they can be purchased for like 70, 80 cents on the dollar. Really, the lender pretty much has a say of what they're going to let that go at, only because it's so valuable. All the contact information is still fresh. So first placements are the most valuable. And then when you get into second, third, fourth placements, they get into a bidding process. You bid on it, and whoever's willing to pay the most, that collection agency will get it. Whether it's purchasing it outright or representing, whatever they're willing to work for is basically what it comes down to. And then you have zombie debt, which is past the statute of limitations. They can no longer sue for, but you have these questionable, I don't want to say low life, but the collection agencies who don't actually specialize in the, I don't know, they never took an ethics course, maybe, I don't know how to better state it. I'm going to lack for words for them, but basically what they do is they throw a bunch of that debt on your credit report, sometimes updating the date of last activity. If your state statute of limitations happens to be 4 years and they're on the 5th year, then it's perfectly legal. They can put the debt on there, but these types of companies we've seen more often than not will participate in things like reporting it multiple times, breaking it up into smaller dollar values, even though it was one original collection. But zombie debt is really what they consider like the lowest level debt. Really, they can't do anything to collect on it other than just throw it on your credit report, and their practices are sometimes questionable. Okay, so collection agency makes its money because they pay anywhere from, let's say, 3 cents to 70 cents. I can actually be as high as 80 cents on the dollar, right? 70, 80 cents on the dollar, yeah, that makes sense. Anything they collect over and above that is their profit after they pay overhead and that type of thing. Now, generally speaking, they're all working on quotas, and they have some type of commission structure involved as well. Depending on the person that they're coming after, it really depends on how they're paid. If it's a utility bill, for instance, they generally see that person as probably not as well educated, and they're usually much more aggressive with their collection practices. Whereas someone who they're collecting a $50,000 student loan on is probably more educated, they're more willing to work with them on a payment plan. Okay. That said, let me see, payment plan. Okay, so this is how they collect. They might purchase $10 million worth of debt. Let's say they're buying it, third placement, and they ended up paying 30 cents on the dollar. Okay, so anything they collect over and above that, that's their profit. They load all that database, which is basically just names, telephone numbers, addresses, what the debt amount is, that type of thing, into a computer. The computer spits out a dunning letter which says, we are trying to collect the debt, contact us now, and we'll be willing to accept payment at this price, and such on and so forth. They send out the letter, and then what happens is they just call you as many times as possible. They're on predictive auto dialers, and they're just dialing numbers over and over and over again, just trying to get somebody on the phone. As soon as they get you on the phone, they just want to get some money out of you. They don't care really how, on what terms, whatever. Their job is not let you off the phone until they get an agreement for some type of payment, whether it's a down payment or the payment in full. Okay, now, here's a tip. When you're calling, if you're going to negotiate a debt with them, you want to do it towards the end of the month because they have quotas to meet. Okay, they're much more willing to negotiate if it's towards the end of the month. They're going to get back to you faster with an answer because they want to make their money. So that's a good tip for you. Another thing to keep in mind is if they're buying $10 million worth of debt, what do you think the chances are they're getting all the paperwork that came along with it? Because you as a consumer have the right to request certain documentation under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. You're allowed to see copies of the contract that they have a valid debt to collect against you. You can see the payment history that that you're even in default in the first place. You can see the original balance that's owed as opposed to the interest and late charges and everything that they added onto it. You can ask when the date of last activity was, and a plethora of other information that you should have in order to be able to negotiate from a position of an educated position. So you want to ask all that information first to make sure that they have a debt to collect against you. If it's under $1,000, chances are they're not going to have it, and they're not going to spin their wheels trying to get it to you. So, a large percentage of the time, that stuff's just going to go away. They'll probably end up selling it to another collection agency eventually and coming after you again, but you deal with it then. If it's over $1,000, chances are they can sue you. So I wouldn't recommend disputing it. You're just going to get yourself into trouble. Instead, you want to start negotiations. And when you're negotiating, as I said, you want to do it towards the end of the month when they're more willing to deal with you. Now, here's another tip. Do not negotiate if you can't make payment in full, because they're not willing to take a monthly payment plan and give you a discount. It's just not going to happen. They're working on a quota. They want to get paid. If they paid 50 cents and you offering 70 cents, they're probably going to jump on it, especially if it's towards the end of the month. So when you're negotiating with collection agencies towards the end of the month, have payment in full. Otherwise, don't call, and validate before actually paying for it. The reason why this works is because some of the largest collection agencies have maybe 200 telemarketers calling people all day long, but they probably only have 1 or 2 people in the legal department. 1 or 2 people in the legal department having to handle all these validation requests. Just not going to happen. So that's Collections Exposed. That's the real world, what's happening in the collection agency, and why you shouldn't be scared of them when they call.